Hi, welcome back to the Empower Students Now podcast. I'm your host, Amanda Werner, and today we are talking about nervous system regulation and regulating a classroom. This is part 3 in a series. So if you haven't listened to part 1 or part 2 yet, I really suggest and want you to go back and start there. So the previous 2 episodes are where you want to find those, part 1 and part 2. And it's not because, this episode will definitely make sense without listening to the first parts. It'll make sense on its own, but it's because I really think that the sequence matters. Part 1 was about regulating yourself, which can be really challenging, especially if you're a teacher and you're a caregiver and you're a woman. If you're neurodivergent, it's really challenging to even really pay attention to the signs of dysregulation. And so that part 1 is all about you. Part 2 is about your family and co-regulation and what that actually means. And how to do it. So part 3 is about the classroom. And the order is intentional because everything I'm going to say rests on the foundation that has been built in the first 2 episodes. The big idea of the whole series is regulation moves outward from you. You cannot give what you don't have. If you're burned out, you're going to feel burned out in your body and you're going to radiate out that stress to others. That's just, humans are social creatures and it's just the way things are. When you're stressed, you can stress others around you, not just in your classroom, but in your home as well. And we all have sort of our own coping mechanisms, our own abilities to calm ourselves, and like a lot of those are rooted in the history of how we've behaved and how we were treated in the past. But you are the adult in the room of your classroom, and that means your nervous system is, and I truly believe this, the most powerful tool you have as a teacher. And it's just, I think that a lot of teachers feel like they have to be very strict or have some sort of reward system or like behavior tracking system or a very, strict consequence structure. And of course, I want, you have to follow your school's policies. And I will come back to all of this more during this episode. So let's go ahead and jump into this important topic. Welcome to the Empower Students Now podcast, a podcast about equity, neurodiversity, mindfulness, and student engagement. There's a lot that needs to change in our education system. The good news is teachers have the power to make these changes now. There's pushback in some circles and online Facebook groups, all sorts of on social media about gentle teaching or trauma-informed approaches in the classroom. I mentioned in part 2 of this series that I saw a Facebook post from someone I don't follow. You always get like these suggested posts. And I have been on Facebook a lot lately because I'm living in Uruguay and I'm really dependent on these expat Facebook groups to connect with other people who are living here, which has been very helpful. But I saw this post of a principal saying that gentle parenting, or I don't know the phrase they used exactly, but it was, one of those popular phrases about like just different ways of parenting. that aren't so punishment based, that gentle parenting was one of the worst things to happen to public education. I think because they believe that, we're just letting kids get away with too much. And I just think that this whole idea of like, we're letting kids get away with too much, or that they have too much pleasure at their fingertips. Sure. I mean, that is true. And there are other elements at play here. And so I think it's really important to remember that this is a complex issue, students' behavior. And it really affects teachers, it affects everyone, it affects families. And so behavior management is really, really important. But what does that even mean? Behavior management. I mean, it sounds pretty hard, like you're trying to keep the lid on a pot that's at a roiling boil, like it just sounds like you're suppressing behavior temporarily. And I really think that, like, people who say, like, we've gotten too soft, we let kids run over us, they don't have structure, they don't have consequences, and screens are really like causing them to be so much more dysregulated. They have no attention span anymore. I mean, you've heard all of these things, and they're so negative about kids. And and also, like, when you talk about nervous system regulation or trauma-informed practices, it's just making excuses for bad behavior. And I am saying this in sort of a ridiculing tone about this argument that a lot of people are making in schools and online. Understanding the nervous system is not the same as permissive parenting, teaching. It's not the same. They're completely different things. Yes, you are going to have structure. Yes, you are going to have consequences. Yes, you're going to have a policy that you follow that your school has implemented. But a regulated classroom is actually a more structured classroom, because when kids feel safe and seen and cared for by their teacher, when their nervous systems are not in threat mode, they can actually access parts of their brain where they are able to follow directions, where they want to learn, where they want to problem solve. They want to think flexibly. They want to conform to the structure that you have put in place for them. Nervous system awareness doesn't replace structure. It makes the structure work. Punishing a dysregulated student does not regulate them. It might suppress their behavior temporarily, but it doesn't build the capacity for them to learn self-regulation strategies, which is ultimately what we all want. And we as the teacher need to be able to model that and talk about these topics openly with our kids. And honestly, prioritize that stress management, like boundaries around devices. I mean, these are lessons that kids desperately need. And parents, we're all struggling, thrashing around, trying to figure out how to live in this new tech age. It's not really new, but it's just like changing so fast. And it's impacting everyone, and blaming kids and saying we're just letting them get away with everything, it just doesn't help. And so just let me talk about like kind of how this looks in a classroom. Okay. So, your nervous system is the classroom's nervous system. This is the central idea of this episode, and I really want you to take in that idea. Students, especially young students and especially neurodivergent students, are reading your nervous system constantly, not even consciously. They're not thinking, my teacher seems stressed today, but their bodies are picking up on your body's signals. Your tone of voice, your pace, your facial expressions, your body tension, the way you move through the classroom, all of it is information that the kids in your classroom pick up on. They're processing and responding to it at an unconscious level. And this is what I talked about in episode 2. This is co-regulation. We talked about this in the context of a family, but the same principle applies in the classroom. When you walk into the room regulated, when you're calm, peaceful, grounded, present, you are offering your nervous system as a resource to every student in your room. And when you walk in dysregulated, already at the end of your rope, and just bracing for the day and feeling like this is the last place I want to be right now, they feel that. And it's totally understandable in the environment of schools today that you would feel like, I don't want to be here right now. And it just raises the activation level of your whole classroom before you've even taken attendance. And honestly, just the simple task of taking attendance has caused me to be dysregulated. So, I mean, I get dysregulated very easily as someone with ADHD. And the way that I coped with it in the classroom, when I was still in the classroom, and I was in the classroom for 16 years teaching elementary, middle, and high school. I have experience in almost all grades. And the way that I dealt with it was overworking and overcompensating and being highly energetic, very fast paced. And it was my, energy, the energy that I had in the classroom was probably a lot of the times too high, too much for many kids. I was intense, and I was a lot of times, teachers often are, because our teachers are the center of attention, but like, I just think because I was so dysregulated all the time in the classroom, and the way that I masked my dysregulation was like being overly excited, it probably caused a lot of dysregulation. And there were so many days that I was not okay, that I did not want to be there, that I just felt like crying. And sometimes I did. I would go to the bathroom and cry. Between periods or at lunch, in my car or on my way home. I'm not saying that you need to be calm when you don't feel calm. That's masking, and masking is exhausting, and it doesn't actually regulate anyone. What I'm saying is that even a small investment in paying attention to your own nervous system and your own strategies for regulating yourself before you enter the classroom, even just 2 minutes of breathing in and out through my nose, out through my mouth, calmed me down. Pausing at my door, looking around and just naming things in my environment, so that I'm not thinking or overthinking, because like rumination and feeling like, I don't want to be here. I don't want to be here. I don't want to be here. I want to go home. Why is this my job? Why did I pick this profession? Like, those are ruminating thoughts to be aware of. And so when you can like sit in your car or walk through the hallway of your school and just pay attention to the feeling of your feet on the ground. Sometimes I would do this chant, sa, ta, na, ma, and I would just do it over and over again and touch my thumb to all 4 of my fingers. Sa, ta, na, ma. It stopped that ruminating, constant, just negative thinking. And so these are all super small things that you can do that genuinely shift what happens next in your classroom. Not because you're faking it, but because you've given your nervous system just enough signal to find the edge of the regulated zone. And that's enough to anchor a classroom. It's enough to anchor you for the rest of the day, usually. So what does co-regulation look like in a classroom? Let's talk about that right now. So, because I know teachers want practical tools, I want to give you those. But I also want you to understand why these things work, not just what to do and what the strategies are. Because when you understand the why, you can adapt the tool to your specific student, your grade level, your school context. So your voice is a regulation tool. The pace, volume, and tone of your voice, it directly signals the nervous system of everyone listening. A slow, steady voice says, and even you just taking a breath, it signals to your whole nervous system and to your classroom, we are safe. There's no emergency here. A high, fast, loud voice, even if the words are neutral, signals urgency and activates threat responses in the body. And this is actually why whispering works with escalated students. Not because it's like smart or clever or whatever trick, but because it's physiologically pulling their nervous system towards yours. They have to quiet themselves to hear you. So practicing slowing down your speech and talking quieter when the room gets loud, it feels really counterintuitive. And like, believe me, I'm like one of those teachers that would like use the microphone and the sound system all the time. And you could speak really slowly into those too. They're really nice because you can, the kids in the very back can hear you. And like, my instinct and a lot of teachers' instinct is to be louder, to be heard, but it's actually better to quiet your voice, and it's a powerful regulation tool that you can use. Your body is a regulation tool. So how you hold yourself, if your shoulders are slumped down, your arms are crossed, you have a tight jaw, students can see all of that. And it makes them tense too. So moving slowly, sometimes I'll sit in my teacher's chair with my feet flat on the floor, put my hands in my pocket or cross my arms behind my back, and stand up a little bit straighter, take a few deep breaths. Breath is so powerful. It's a really like instant signal to your body that you can calm down. It's okay. And so these are all choices you can make in a classroom to calm yourself down and to calm your students down. Predictability is a regulation tool as well, especially for neurodivergent students. When students don't know what's coming next or how your class works or what the schedule is or how to transition between one thing and another, and they're just really sudden, or routines shift without warning, or the rules feel really inconsistently applied, a lot of kids can get activated by that, especially neurodivergent kids. And they can't learn when they're chronically, feeling like alert or like on edge because they don't know when you're going to change things on them. So just having a predictable classroom is also a way to regulate your classroom. So clear routines, consistent transitions, warnings before changes. These all can help kids in your classroom feel safe and not on guard all the time. Another thing to consider is just the sensory environment of your classroom. I am someone who regulates myself by cleaning. And I used to feel kind of guilty about this. Like, why do you spend so much time organizing your classroom or cleaning? Like, I shouldn't be doing all of this. I should make my students do more or my husband do more or whatever. And yes, maybe that's true that they should pitch in more. But I realized over time that cleaning is something that calms me. And I've always been someone who's been like hyper organized, just really, really enjoys organizing things and like having a clutter-free classroom. But I know that's not everyone. Some teachers have a really hard time, and it's understandable. I mean, I did too, because just all the junk that we accumulate as teachers. So like, what can you get rid of? Thinking about what does your classroom look and sound like? What does it feel like? Walk into your room and try to pretend you're not you, that you're a new student who's just arrived. Is it visually overwhelming? Is it loud? What's the lighting like? Is it really harsh? These things matter more than most teachers can ever really realize. And teacher training programs don't teach teachers these things. For neurodivergent students, especially, the sensory environment is not a comfort preference. It's a regulation factor. And I know this as a neurodivergent teacher. I had to have a clutter-free classroom in order to feel calm. So a student or a teacher who is sensorially overwhelmed is a student whose nervous system is activated, which means they are a student who cannot access the learning in your classroom. You may not have full control over how your classroom looks in the classroom environment, but just try and think about what can you adjust to make it feel calmer. You could dim the lights or, use lamps instead of the fluorescent lights. I had a classroom that had a lot of windows, and so I would just turn the lights off and we just use natural lighting. Sometimes I would turn the lights on if it was if we were doing something that really kids needed to see really well, like a standardized test, or sometimes it was required that I turn the lights on, but or if students complained or whatever. But lamps also help to add more of a soft lighting into a classroom. So if you can just make small little adjustments, it can be really helpful. Also, taking advantage of kids that also like to organize, having them, if you're someone who struggles to organize, I think that students who love organizing, they're in every classroom. And so just, hiring them as an assistant to help you, organize, and it is really helpful. And, giving things away to kids, as prizes or whatever, if you need to get rid of stuff, that is an idea too. So I want to just transition into this other idea that a teacher's regulation practice is really, and this, I don't think this gets said enough, is the first behavior management strategy that teachers need to try. Your own practice regulating yourself, calming. When I say regulating, I mean calming yourself. It's the things we talked about in part 1, the body scans, the breathing, just the noticing, noting what thoughts are ruminating in your mind, noticing the pounding heart or the tight throat. These are behavior management strategies. And it's probably, not something that you think of when you think of behavior management, what, my breathing? But yeah, really, it's true. Because if you're chronically stressed, your classroom is going to be too. A student who is off task, it might look like defiance to you if you're really stressed out. A student who asks too many questions might seem like they're a kid who's challenging you. This is your monkey mind. And even if you're an adult and you have lots of teaching experience, your perception of your students, it is filtered through your stress levels. You respond from that threat activated place, and the student's nervous system responds in turn, and it escalates and it creates its own cycle. So I have a few ideas for you to just maybe consider. So one of them is having, especially if you have younger kids, having a morning meeting or an opening circle where everyone can gather together and hear each other's voices and just have a social ritual. I think that can be really helpful in making eye contact. Sometimes that can be overwhelming for some kids. And so just knowing that just because a kid isn't looking at you doesn't mean they're not listening. Eye contact can be very calming to some people and to some kids, but not always. It really depends on who you are and where you are. Having transition rituals can also be really, really helpful. So building rituals into transitions. So like having like calming music playing when it's time to clean up, or having everyone in the room take 5 deep breaths together before the next activity. These are like just little rituals that you can make things more predictable for kids. Giving timer warnings about when things are going to start or end is really helpful. I think breaks are really, really important. Breaks for kids to move, breaks for kids to socialize, to stretch, to just be, and even to be on their phones. Like sometimes, and this is hard to face, but sometimes, especially for neurodivergent kids, a phone and a game that they play regularly on their phone can be really regulating for them. So considering that as well might be something you think about. You can also, I've tried this before and I don't know, it kind of worked, kind of didn't work. So it's called a regulation corner or a calm down space, not a punishment corner, but just a place in your room with lower sensory input, with maybe like fidgets or a drawing pad or a set of headphones where a student can go when they need to regulate before they move on to a different activity. It's not where they go when they're in trouble. It's where a kid might need to go when they're overwhelmed. So having maybe a space in your room that's dedicated, even if it's just for one kid, and you don't tell the classroom that that's what it is, or maybe it's for your whole classroom and your students take turns using that area. I had like a Zen garden and like these really calming posters everywhere around mine. And then just having like an end of the day or an end of the period closing ritual is really, I think, important too, because transitions matter and they can be a time of dysregulation. I know that the end of a class period was always really dysregulating for me. So just having kids, have a predictable routine during that time. Again, you could do the breathing, like let's all take 5 deep breaths together. And I wouldn't force this either. Like some kids won't. Some kids might hold their breaths. Some kids might roll their eyes at you. That's okay. There will be other kids that appreciate this and benefit from it. And you will benefit from it. Like sometimes I would tell students, okay, we need, we're going to have 5 minutes of just silence. And you can put your head down if you want. Or you can, meditate with me, but I'm just going to sit with my feet flat and take some deep breaths in the silence. Sometimes this can be a little bit hard at first because some kids are like, ooh, let me make this funny sound, or I'm going to just like throw everyone off by being a goofball during this. And that happens. And, you might even speak like to that kid later, or you could preface the activity or the ritual with like, yeah, sometimes there might be noises, sometimes there might be someone who wants to test, the silence. And, you can either ignore it or you can say, yeah, that's normal. Just realize that that's just part of the silence. Like, because sometimes when we meditate, we expect it to be like perfect. And sometimes explaining to kids that no, actually it's not perfect. There's lots of noises going on in a school and in a classroom. And maybe that's the thing you meditate on, shuffling feet, some breathing, like a clock ticking, someone clearing their throat. Like all of these noises are interesting and part of the meditative experience. You might explain it to students like that. I don't know. Or you could just ignore all the noises and just like try your best to calm yourself. And I tell students like this is more for me than it is for you, even though that's not necessarily true, because when you're regulated, your kids are more regulated. Okay. So one other thing I want to talk about, which is when a student is in crisis. Everything I've talked about so far is preventative. It's about lowering the baseline so that a crisis happens less often. but they still happen. A student might have a meltdown or a situation that escalates in the classroom. And in that moment, here's what you need to remember. First, regulating yourself, using these tools that I discussed, it is the intervention. So if someone's having a meltdown, before you say anything, before you do anything, check your own state. Take a breath, lower your voice, slow your movement. You are the regulated nervous system in the moment, and your job is to stay that way. Second, less is more. And I talked about this in the second in this series, that fewer words are better. Talking, problem solving when a kid is in crisis or dysregulated, it's just not going to help. It's going to escalate things. So using simple sentences, I'm here, you're safe, take your time, and speaking slowly is really, really helpful. Third, proximity and presence over problem solving. Don't try to figure out what happened or assign consequences in the middle of a crisis. Just be present nearby, but not crowding the student. And, call for help when you need to. Fourth, protect the student's dignity. A student in crisis is a student in a vulnerable state. Whatever you say and do in the moment in front of your class will be remembered by them and by every other student watching. So do your best to respond in a way that would be comfortable with all the students who are seeing what's happening between you and this dysregulated student. And then fifth, repair after the crisis is over, like problem solving, all of these things, a real conversation about what happened. It's all really important. Just like with the family episode, when a student has had a hard moment and then comes back to the situation or to you the next day or a week later, it's important to have connection and say, I'm glad you're feeling better. I'm here and I want to support you, and let's problem solve together so that we make sure that, next time this doesn't happen. So this is the last episode in this series. I appreciate you sticking with me this whole time. And I just want to name that none of this is easy. It's all very, very hard. But I really, especially over summer break, I wanted to put out some episodes that might help teachers going back into the school year, because I know that behavior and student behavior is one of the biggest things on teachers' minds right now, because it's been out of control and so hard and challenging. And there's just overcrowded classrooms and under-resourced schools and just unreasonable demands placed on teachers every day. I know this because I lived this too. There's so many things that are out of your control. But the reason I wanted to put this series out there is because there is something in your control, and that's your nervous system. You have influence over that. You always have the ability to take breaths, to use these tools within yourself, to take care of yourself. And it's probably one of the most important things you can work on and get better at, is noticing your own body and your own mind. And it's for your students, it's for your family, and it's for you too, of course. So if you found this series helpful, I would love it if you shared it with someone who you think would find it helpful too. Send it to a teacher friend who needs it. You could share it on social media. You can leave a review of the podcast, because that really, really helps more people learn about this podcast and also get help from it. I have a lot of resources on amandarightnow.com that you can go and purchase to support the podcast. I am making lots of new resources about these topics of social emotional learning and neurodiversity affirming behavior support. And so definitely check out my website as more resources come out that are built for for growing in these areas. Thank you so much for listening and just going on this journey with me in this series. I'm so grateful for every single one of you who listens. And I really wish you well as you begin your new school year soon. And I am going to take a little break from this podcast. So I wanted to let you know that I've been consistently publishing episodes once a week. But I am currently in the process of finding a permanent home in my new country of Uruguay. And so that is definitely stressful. And so you might hear from me, you might not, but I'll definitely be back with consistent episodes once I have a more permanent home. And so I really appreciate you listening. And now go take care of your nervous system. You deserve it.